luxury real estate agents. Welcome to part 3 of my 7 steps to handling objections. As you recall, my first video we talked about steps 1 through 3. Last time we did steps 4 through 7. Today I'm going to summarize the 7 steps and spend some time talking about step number 5, which is exactly how do you deal with objections. And I'm going to give you some insights from the political world, since we have so much talk about the upcoming election dominating the news and the media today. I'm going to show you how people in politics and media handle objections using a matrix. So we're going to cover that today. Let's do a quick review though. The 7 steps we use for handling objections are: number 1, to pause. Next is we repeat the objection. People like to know that they've been heard and understood. Next, we acknowledge the objection. Fourth, we isolate the objection, make sure there's nothing else coming down the road before we deal with this particular one. Number 5, the one we're going to come back to in a moment, is to deal with the objection. 6 is to move on. And 7 is to close. So let's go back for a second to step number 5, where we deal with the objection and talk about how we can do that more effectively. First of all, I learned this from a media company, how to create an objection matrix. And basically, if you follow my little cursor here, you can put objections across the top of your little matrix here, or just use a Word document, doesn't really matter. But then you have really 4 categories in how you frame your response to a particular objection. First, you have the response, then you have a story, then you have some data, then you have an analogy. What you might have fun with is, number 1, if you email me, I'll send you a copy of this objection. It's a Excel file, easy to use and open. But the next time you're watching a debate or an interview or even a press conference, as the political season unfolds, see if you can spot this framework that politicians use all the time, and we can use it in our real estate business. I'm just going to bounce out of PowerPoint for a second and go to a live version of my Excel spreadsheet of the objection matrix, just to show you an example. So let's pretend we're on a listing appointment and the seller says, well, we want to exclude our neighbors because they've expressed interest in buying our house from us. So we want you to sign the contract, we want you to do all the work, we want you to try to get our house sold. But if we sell the house to our next door neighbor, we want to exclude them from the contract and not have to pay you a fee. So I hear this all the time, by the way, and here is my actual response. You can see it written right here. We don't do exclusions because we find that we are most often the reason that a property sells. It is our efforts and reputation that causes your buyer to act. So that's our response. The story is, we had another seller who wanted to exclude his neighbor, and we suggested that he go and talk to the neighbor and try to sell it on his own. And if things didn't work out, we could list the property for them. And that's exactly what they did. So the story continues and we use the data. They spent several months and got the neighbor to $4.5 million, and they just got exasperated and gave up. We listed the house and sold the house within 10 days to the neighbor for $6.5 million. So there's the data. The analogy I use is, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, imagine we're sitting at the dining room table or the kitchen table or any kind of a table, but Mr. and Mrs. Seller, imagine that the entire market for your property is represented by the surface of the table that we're sitting at right now. Then I put a sheet of paper down on the table. Why would you want to limit the market to just the area contained in the sheet of paper? That's essentially what you're doing when you deal with your neighbor directly, making them an exclusion. You're basically giving them the privilege of negotiating on your house with no sense of urgency, no sense of competition. So that's the story that we use, and that's the analogy that we use. Another example is commission. You ever hear a commission objection? We only want to pay X percent. Here the story is told all throughout your listing presentation. When you're talking about your points of difference, when you're talking about your marketing plan, all the way through your listing presentation, the story needs to be, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I think that my negotiating skills are worth 2 to 4 points of extra selling price for your house. I believe that our marketing plan is worth 1 to 3 more points in sales price for your house. I believe that our market preparation for your house is worth 2 to 4 points. Quantify through the story the difference in sales price you can realize for them, and then you can give some data, which is to quantify. Again, 2 points for marketing, 3 points for negotiating, whatever it happens to be. And then the analogy I use is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, a lot of people think that real estate agents, are just toll takers on the real estate highway. And when you're driving down the highway trying to get your house sold, you look for the toll booth with the smallest toll so that you can have the highest net. What I'm here to tell you is that we bring value to the process of selling your home. We help you build a higher top end so that you'll have a higher net even if you pay my full fee. So anyway, there's an example of how you deal with the objection as step number 5. Breaks it down into four parts: response, story, data, and analogy. And sometimes you can skip one of these parts, like skip the story or skip the analogy, but I really think it's good to do all 4. Again, watch the politicians on TV as they do this, and you'll see how they follow a similar framework when they're answering questions from the press or even questions during a debate, because that's essentially their version of an objection that we have to deal with. So that's it for dealing with objections. I want to remind you that if you order my book, Selling Luxury Homes, for $29.95, it includes $100 worth of free downloads, other spreadsheets besides the Objection Matrix, which I just showed you, and you also get a consulting call with me that's worth $400. It's a 20-minute consulting call. Get your most pressing, burning luxury real estate question answered during that call. Here's the actual certificate that you'll be emailed with a confirmation for your book order. Thank you for your kind attention today. If you have any questions, as always, send me an email to jack@jackcotton.com, or you can ask a question on my blog at jackcotton.com. In the meantime, make it a great week. Look forward to hearing from you soon.